Hello and welcome to Philips Strand Lighting's Neo Lighting Control Console video tutorial series, designed to help you learn to program entertainment lighting on the Neo Lighting Control Console platform. This video discusses cues. Alright, prior to setting any levels and recording in the cue, we want to make sure that Neo is going to record in the manner in which we expect it to. So let's look at our default settings. Directly on your live screen on your sidebar right above your Q0, it will tell you that we're going to record live, tracking mode, and marking is turned off. Now, the record live is fine. Tracking, I like to work in tracking, so that's fine. Marking turned off, I think I'd want to have that turned on. So what we're going to do is go into System Properties, go into Show Defaults. Here's where we could change our default record mode. Live selected, active, or change, so the options will stay with live. Default tracking record mode, cue only, track, or track back. We're going to stay with tracking. Select auto mark. I'm going to ask that it mark as late as possible, which is the more common theatrical way to do it. If you're doing live events, fast-paced environments, you may want that to mark as early as possible. And we're going to look at these three options: include running effects. I'm going to leave that turned on. Include submasters. I'm going to turn that off. And include palettes. I'm going to turn that on. Now, since I've set marking, I'm going to look at my marking time. And right now it's going to mark in the cue time of the cue. Now, some people may like that. I'm going to give myself a marking delay of half a second. And I'm going to give a marking time of, let's say, 2.5 seconds. That will mean that between the two, it's after the completion of the previous cue, it will be 3 seconds before the marking is complete. You may find that too long. You may find that it's too slow because the lights are make too much noise. You may find that you don't need any delay at all, so you can adjust that accordingly. Or this nice feature to mark in cue time, that way if you've got a slow cue, it will mark using that cue time. So I'm going to hit OK, and we're going to look at bring up some levels and recording. Okay, let's look at what we have here. We do have a Q0. This varies a little bit from console to console, but on Neo, Q0 can be a recorded state. So you could make that your preset cue, your marking cue to start your cue list if you want. So you could set it up the way you want, record Q0, and you're done. Now you'll notice there's a flag here that says Smart Block. Now a Smart Block is a more intelligent version of a block cue. This only blocks channels or attributes that have an instruction in the cue. So it allows a block to only affect the channels and fixtures that have value changes, rather than blocking the entire list of patched channels. So again, it's a more intelligent version of a block cue. But if I'm going to write a Q1, and let's say it's my backlights that are coming on. So I'm going to say 31 through 39 at 60, and now we're going to look at recording. So since I'm recording live, it's going to take everything that I have outputting, which is only my blue backlights. It's going to record in tracking mode, but frankly, since we're recording our first cue and there are no other cues in the cue list, we really don't have to worry about this. If you're set up to record cue only or tracking, at this point, it's going to be exactly the same. So there's a couple of ways of going about it. I could say record cue, and notice on the command line it says live in parentheses for that cue, so it's just confirming my default mode, and that's fine. And I'm going to hit 1, enter. Now it's recorded Q1, and let's look at a couple of other things that it's done. It has recorded in the default time of 0. These channels 31 through 39 are no longer selected, and if I look, I've got the blue border around Q1, which tells me that I'm sitting in that queue, or sometimes we like to call it soaking in the queue. So those are a couple of more options that we can look at. So let's go into System Properties. Let's look at our queue time, and I'm actually going to make my default of queue time 3, which means I probably want to make my downtime the same. And I'm going to look at two options here. One is called Make Queue Active after Record Live, and I'm going to keep that checked. And the other one is Release Channels after Record Update, and I'm going to keep that one checked. So those are two options. So you can turn those off if you don't want the console to do both of those things upon every record. Now notice, because I've changed my default time doesn't mean it's changed the time of Q1 that has already been stored. So I'm going to say Q1 time 3 to adjust that appropriately. All right, so we're going to look at some different ways to record, but we'll bring up some more channels and go along. So 21 through 29 full. And now instead of record queue number, enter, I'm just going to say record number, enter. So notice that it assumes queue when you hit the word record, and you put in 2, enter, and now it records the queue. While we're here, notice we've got some new colors on the screen. So 21 through 29 are full. They're in a light blue. That lets us know that the blue color tells us that the levels are going up from the previous queue where they were. So because blue is up like the sky. 31 through 36 have gone from that light blue to a magenta or purple. That's the tracked value, and that simply means that they have not changed from their previous states, so they're still where they are. The important thing here is that they don't actually have an instruction, so they're still where they were at the previous queue, and that's why it's a tracked value. So we're going to keep going. I'm going to say 11 through 19 at 5, and I'm going to grab 21 through 29, and we're going to go down to 30%. And notice on my selected channels I've got full in parentheses on the side, letting us know that that's the level that they have come from. And what I'm going to do now is press record and just directly press enter. And what this is going to do is not only record assumes queue, but record enter will sort of turn over queue number management to the console. And what Neo does is it will record the next available whole number at the end of the queue list. So this recorded Q3. And if we look, we have a new color to look at. 21 through 29 who have gone down in value are green, because green is down like the grass. So we'll now take a look, and I'm going to bring up 101 through 110 just by doing 101 through enter, and we'll go to full. And now the last shortcut for the command line way to record is I'm actually just going to hit the record button twice. It's the simplest way to do it, the fastest, because you're not moving your finger, so there's little chance of hitting the wrong button. And those are the 4 basic ways to record cues via command line. All right, some of the more advanced things that you can do with command line record is you could do record queue, and then notice we talked earlier about how it says live. I can hit the queue button again, and what this will do is toggle to all of the options. So record, selected, active, and changed. I could also put in, let's say I'll put in a queue number, record Q5, and I could put in time, and I could say time 5. I could hit time again, and what that does is a slash to separate uptime from downtime, So I'll put time 3, enter, and we'll record that. We can see on our sidebar cue list that the uptime is 5, the downtime is 3. Some other things we could do is if I want to record a cue and change my tracking options. So I can hit the tracking options button and I can go through track, cue only, and track back. So we'll just say we'll record this cue only, enter, even though I haven't given any levels, so it really doesn't matter at this point. You also have a block key, so I could say record block, enter, or record cue, number, block, enter, and that will create a hard block. And notice that we get a flag on Q7 in the sidebar that says block. And if you look at the channel grid, notice everything has a hard value or a white value. That's the color of a hard value or a redundant instruction. I could also have hit block twice to get to the option of smart block. So you can change between the two as needed. And if I do enter there, notice that we've recorded Q8, and I get a tag on Q8 that says smart block. Going over some of the other things that you can do that are on the advanced tile, delay. So I could say delay, things like time, delay, follow, are actually not, they're part of the cue process, but they're not part of the recording process. So I could say Q5, delay, 3, enter, and that will put a delay on Q5 so that when you run the cue, it's going to delay 3 counts before the cue is triggered. If I want to just put a delay on the down, so I could say Q3 delay, and I'll hit delay again, which gives me the slash, and I'll say 1, enter, and that's going to put a delay on just the down. We also have the follow command. So if I want Q7 to automatically run after Q6 has complete, I could say Q6 follow 3, enter. And what that will do is put a follow time on Q6 so that after I trigger Q6 by hitting go, then it'll fade in 3 counts, and then it'll also start counting the follow at that time. So at the end of 3 counts on the follow, it will run Q7 automatically. So I'm going to use the go to command to go to Q5, and I'm going to hit go, and we're going to run Q6, and at the end of that it automatically runs Q7. And notice that we have a little purple autofollow flag on Q6 identifying that to make it easier to view. Alright, now let's look at recording via via the graphical engine. So there's a couple of ways of going about it, and when I started to say command line is you can trigger this via command line. So if I press and hold record and toggle the cue button, I get a dialog box. This dialog box, I can select the cue list, I can select the record mode, I can select the tracking mode, and these all start as the defaults. I've got cue number, cue description, cue time, down time, cue delay, down delay, follow time. I can turn on or off running effects, include palettes, include submasters. This option is really for the software running on the PC where a laptop has a camera. It allows you to snapshot an image of the camera and go directly to the cue notes for that particular cue. There is another option here called force fixture block. What that means is any parameter that is adjusted for any fixture, it will actually block the entire fixture. Not the cue, but just everything on that fixture. It simplifies attribute programming. And now here, I have options that I can turn certain things off. So if I were only want to record intensity, I might select none and then just select intensity information. Now this can also be triggered from the record cue button at the top of the screen or via your touch screen. Or there are also pull downs for some advanced features: record active fixtures to queue, record selected fixtures to queue, record live fixtures to queue, record selected fixtures to multiple queues, and then you get to pick what range you want per queue list, and you get to select the attribute families. And let's see, remove selected fixtures from multiple queues. Same thing, we'll get the dialog box and you get to check off which queues you want. And the last one is set selected fixtures part for multiple queues. Alright, so we've talked about the queue list that's on your sidebar. Right, you've got fixture control tab, master playback tab, you've got queue list, you've got a screen button for deleting queues. You can click on a queue to move the queue pointer. You can double click to advance to the queue. You can hit run, go, stop back, reset. All of that's available in the sidebar. However, there is a more extensive version of the queue list. Now here's the full queue list. If you're on the touch screen, you can use the console's flick gestures to flick up, and what it will do is be the same as double clicking the header, and it will maximize the floating window. Flicking down will be the same as double clicking the header to bring it back to a floating window. So we're going to maximize so we can look at this. So in the left hand pane you have your multiple queue lists that appear. In the main window you have your list of queues. So you have your queue number, the description, so we could change that at any time. Notice you have tags or labels that show whether it's a marked queue or if it's a block or a smart block or anything. You also have status, so if I hit go, we can see the status that will change on the queue. You've got the trigger pull down for each queue to determine whether it's manually triggered, an auto follow, MIDI, taking a MIDI signal, an audio, playing back from the audio track, or doing a SMPTE timecode. Channels. It's a nice column here that will show you the channels that have an instruction in the queue. So it won't show any tracked values, but it will show channels that have an instruction. And if I click on the three buttons to the right, I'll do it for another queue here. It will highlight the contents of those channels down in the queue list detail window. So if we look at this, you've got several tabs on the left. You have an overview, which is showing all of the fixtures and the parameter information that's in the queue. So you've got time, delay, blocks. So this is actually where you can block a particular fixture. Marking is set, the dimmer preset color, RGB color, and other values. So here's the DMX tab. This will show the actual DMX values for the channels that have instructions. You've got timing information. So this is actually where you could set attribute level timing. For example, if in this queue I want fixture 103 to have a color time of 5, then I could just type that in. And now I've given that an attribute level timing. Delay, same thing. Maybe I want color to move in 5 on 103, but only after a delay of 2. Channel grid, you can take a look at things in different views. So this is showing the expanded view. You've got compact view, you've got the character view, and buttons here for select included, unselect all channels, turn on the selected channels or turn off selected channels. So you can do editing in this window. So you've got palettes. So here on my left I have a list of palettes or groups that I could apply to selected fixtures. Now there are two arrows here which will allow me to go down and look for more parameter data. Also, you can move this up and down depending on how much space you want to dedicate to your QList details window. Paths, I can add a movement path to a channel or group of channels. So I could say 201, let's do, I want you to do that path as you move in this queue, and that's applied. Or I could go the color path and say for channel 103, I want you to go from sort of a mid-red over here to yellow. I want to bypass green and come back and go through blue and back to red. And now you have position path and color path per channel per queue. Also, here's an add delete tab, which will show you available desk channels on the left and channels that are included on the right. If I want to add an instruction for a channel that doesn't exist into the queue, I could select it, click the right button, and now that will put an instruction for that channel into Q4, and I can see the queue that I'm looking at here as well. So that's a little bit about the details. You can close the details window. I can click the 3 button and restore it. This can actually also be a floating window, and if it's floating you can drag it back to dock it within the QList window. Effects, we have 3 buttons here where we could go in and add effects to a particular queue or remove it. So we'll start with it removed. I could click on the effect, say add the queue, and now that's been added to QList ML1, queue number 4. Here's the name. You can assign the delay, fade in time, fade out time, a direction, whether it loops or just runs once and stops, override length, and override stagger. Now, if I have an effect here in Q4 and I want to keep it going in Q5, I can just click this button and say add effects from previous queue, and just continue this process as long as I need the effect to run. At this point, it will start in Q4, it will run through Q5, and it will fade out in Q6. So shortcuts, you could have a queue fire a particular shortcut. So we could add one in, give say shortcut number 1. We could give it a name. Currently shortcut number 1 is firing off our front light group. Delay, fire every, and that's just one shot, meaning when you trigger it, it'll fire. Fire on leaving means when you leave the queue, or I can get rid of it. Groups, you can actually have a queue trigger groups. Here we have follow time, queue delay, downtime, effect delay, time code, and link. So the link field will indicate what queue will run next and can be used to change the order that queues run in. In addition to this, you can specify the number of times that a loop will occur and also what queue will be executed when the loop ends or the go is used to execute queue. For example, a queue can loop back to a previous queue and loop a specific number of times and then execute a different queue when finished. If the go is pressed at any time through the loop, then the exit queue will be run. If no loop count is specified, then the system will loop indefinitely. Regardless, pressing the go will exit the loop to the specified exit queue. So, as an example, to set the loop information, you can enter the following details by saying, so we're going to have Q3 loop back to Q2, do that twice, and then exit out to Q8. So I'll say 2, 2, 8. And we can see that it says 2 for Q2. It's going to loop twice and then exit to Q8. So I'm going to click on 1 and say run Q. And now I can just hit go. And we're running Q2. We're going to run Q3. Go. We'll run Q2 again. Go, run Q3. Now for the and that was the second time. So now the next go we'll run Q8. So we've gone back to our live screen, our main sidebar queue list, and we can see with some of the additional programming, we can see the link, we can see complex timing that has been added, which is what we did in the queue list detail window on delay in, what was it, in Q4. So now we're going to look at the more traditional method of editing queues without it being live, which is blind. So right next to your live button, you have a button for blind. So when you're in your blind screen, notice some of the differences here. You get a gray background, which has been consistent on every professional level Strand desk since the 500 series and 300 series. And you can always use your up and down arrows to go between queues. Now if you do a go-to in this screen, it's actually, go-to is always about playback and outputs, so that's not really what you want to do here. But notice we could type things in, so 52 through 55 at 30. One thing to notice is that the changes have not been made yet. Or, I'm sorry, they've not been stored. They've been made, but they're sitting there. They are selected. You can release, and then nothing will be there. You also have buttons across the top that say exit, blind, and abandon, which means it will not take the additions here. Exit blind, track forward, exit blind, track backward, exit blind, queue only. So you have 3 different options there. If you simply go back to live, which I'm going to do right now, then the changes will be made in the default manner, so in tracking. So if I go to blind and I'll arrow back up, we can see that I was in Q2, so there are the additional channels, and if I go down to 3, they have tracked forward until they hit the block queue, where they would have gone to their instruction of 0. Alright, so I've gone back to Q2, and we're going to look at making some changes here and doing some updating. So 52 through 55 up, which will take them from 30 to 35, and the quickest way of updating a queue is just hitting the update button twice. Now I'll make some more changes here. I could do update enter, and that will accomplish the same thing. I'll make another change. I could hit update queue, and notice when I do that, just like when recording and I hit Q, it allows me to know the default, which is update changed. If I hit if I hit the key Q again, it will go from changed to selected. So I can adjust what I'm updating. I'll stick with the default of changed. I'll just hit enter. And I could also do things like I'll do 58 at 3. I'll update another queue. So I'm going to update Q1. And that goes to Q1. And notice the color's different because it's been put into Q1. We'll go back and look. And when I go down, we can see that it's a tracked value. And all of these values should be here until they hit the block Q, which is Q7. All right, now let's go back to Q2 and let's look at dealing with tracking and Q only when we're talking about updating. So I'm going to bring up 51 at 3. And we know if we look at our defaults in our sidebar at the top of our Q list, it says we're in tracking mode. So if I want to change that for this one update, I can press update, then I go to tracking options, and I can see it now. It says track. I can press tracking options again. That will say Q only. I will hit enter to complete that process. Now notice when I hit go, 51 fades out because I updated in Q2 Q only, which means it now has an instruction to go back to wherever it was, and it was at 0. So that's how you update Q only when you're in tracking mode. The reverse would be true. So if your default is Q only, then you could do update, hit the tracking options key. Once it will say track, and now you could track this value for the one time. Notice it does not change your defaults, so that still remains consistent. But it's just a quick way to record in the non-default tracking method. Thank you for viewing this training video on the Neo Lighting Control Console. I'm Bobby Harrell, Product Specialist for Philips Entertainment. Stay tuned for more training videos.